Ji-hoon Kong built his reputation reading people in under 30 seconds. Spotting bluffs, calculating risk, closing deals from Seoul to Singapore. But he'd spent 3 years working alongside Temalola without really seeing her. She was efficient, invisible. The kind of assistant who anticipated his needs, kept his calendar perfect, dressed to disappear into office furniture. He preferred it that way. Clean boundaries. No complications. The Busan conference was routine merger business. Ji-hoon couldn't sleep after negotiations, so he went to the hotel's rooftop pool at dawn when the city was barely awake. He wasn't expecting to find anyone there. Definitely not Temalola. No glasses. No cardigan. Just her, cutting through water with powerful strokes, suggesting years of practice he'd never asked about. When she surfaced and pushed wet hair from her face, he felt something shift. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Like he'd been reading a document upside down for 3 years, and someone finally turned it right side up. Hey there, story lovers. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always love connecting with our community around the world. If you crave narratives that grip you from the first word and refuse to let go, you're exactly where you need to be. Smash that like button. It truly makes a difference in helping us reach more readers. And if you're new around here, hit subscribe to catch every single tale we share. Alright, let's get started. Ji-hoon Kong stood in the warehouse, hands in his pockets, watching his men drag a whimpering accountant toward him. Blood dripped from the man's nose across dusty concrete. I asked you a simple question, Ji-hoon said, voice soft as silk and twice as dangerous. Where is my money? The accountant babbled about investments, market fluctuations, needing more time. Ji-hoon tilted his head, studying him like an insect, then nodded once. His second-in-command stepped forward with a baseball bat. Wait, the Songdo account. It's under Davies's name. Ji-hoon smiled without warmth. See, that wasn't so difficult. He turned toward the exit. Behind him, the accountant sobbed with relief. Ji-hoon paused at the door, glancing back. Tae-min, make sure he understands that stealing from me has consequences. He didn't wait to hear the screams. The office of Kong Holdings was everything the warehouse wasn't: marble floors, expensive art, efficient young executives. Behind a glass partition sat Davies Temalola, drowning in organized chaos. At the center of it all, behind a glass partition that separated the executive suite from the common floor, sat Davies Temalola. She was drowning in paperwork. File folders covered her desk in organized chaos, each labeled with color-coded tabs. Her laptop displayed 3 different spreadsheets simultaneously. Behind her thick-framed glasses, her eyes darted between screens with systematic precision. No, Mr. Chun, she said into the phone, voice firm but polite. Mr. Kang's schedule is completely full this week. I can offer you Thursday at 2 p.m. next week, or Friday at 9 a.m. Those are the only available slots. She listened, rolled her eyes, and typed something into her calendar. Yes, I understand it's urgent. Everyone's meeting is urgent. Thursday at 2 p.m. I'll send the confirmation. She hung up and immediately grabbed her coffee, draining half the cup in one gulp. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, secured with exactly 4 bobby pins. Her cardigan was buttoned all the way up despite the office heating. Her skirt fell precisely to her knees. Everything about her screamed, "Don't look at me twice." The elevator chimed. Temalola didn't need to look up. She knew that particular rhythm of footsteps. Confident, measured, expensive shoes on marble. Mr. Kong, she said, still focused on her screen. You have the board meeting in 15 minutes. I've prepared the quarterly reports, but you should know that Director Huang is going to challenge the expansion budget. I've included counterpoints in Section 4. Ji-hoon stopped at her desk. Up close, he was even more intimidating than in the warehouse, though in a completely different way. Here, he was polished, controlled. The dragon tattoo that coiled up his forearm was hidden beneath French cuffs and platinum cufflinks. His black hair was styled with precision. His tie was perfectly knotted. Only his eyes gave him away. Dark, calculating, and entirely too observant. You're early, Temalola added, finally glancing up. Did someone die? His mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Not yet. Pity. That would have freed up some space in your schedule. This time he did smile, sharp as a knife's edge. Careful, Temalola's sigh. People might think you have a sense of humor. People might think you have a heart. We're both good at hiding things. She handed him a tablet loaded with the presentation. Their fingers brushed. She didn't flinch. Most people flinched when they touched Ji-hoon Kong. Some instinct deep in their lizard brain recognizing a predator when they saw one. But not Temalola. She just pushed her glasses up her nose and returned to her computer. Ji-hoon studied her for a moment longer than necessary. Then he walked toward the boardroom, glancing at the tablet. Everything was perfect as always. She'd anticipated every question, prepared every answer, and organized it in a way that even the most incompetent board member could follow. She was, he admitted privately, the best assistant he'd ever had. Also the most infuriating. The board meeting went exactly as Temalola predicted. Director Huang challenged the expansion. Ji-hoon dismantled his arguments using the counterpoints from Section 4. The budget passed unanimously. The meeting ended 20 minutes early. When Ji-hoon returned to the executive floor, Temalola was arguing with someone on the phone in rapid Mandarin. He caught the words absolutely not and third quarter before she switched back to Korean. No, I don't care if his wife likes orchids. Send roses like a normal person. She hung up and made a note on her pad. Your mother called. She wants you at dinner on Sunday. I told her you'd be there. I have plans on Sunday. You have dinner with your mother on Sunday. I already cleared your schedule. Ji-hoon leaned against her desk. You're very presumptuous for an assistant. You're very forgetful for a CEO. It's your mother's birthday. He'd actually forgotten. He'd never admit it. Fine, he said. Sunday. But you're coming with me. Temalola's head snapped up. Excuse me. My mother likes you. It'll be less painful if you're there. I'm your assistant, not your emotional support animal. Consider it overtime. Consider it absolutely not happening. They stared at each other. This was the dance they did. This back and forth that somehow never crossed into actual insubordination, but always towed the line. His other assistants had quit within weeks, unable to handle his demands or his temper. Temalola had lasted 3 years and showed no signs of breaking. If anything, she seemed to enjoy pushing back. I'll pay you double, he said. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. I want next Friday off. Done. She blinked, surprised he'd agreed so quickly. Then suspicion crept into her expression. What are you planning? Nothing. You're smiling. I'm not. It's that thing your mouth does when you're plotting something. I've seen it before, right before you fired the entire marketing department. Ji-hoon's smile widened, and this time it was genuine. She noticed everything. Absolutely everything. Get back to work, Temalola. Get back to pretending you're a legitimate businessman, Mr. Kong. The words hung in the air for a second too long. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she'd surprised herself. Ji-hoon's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his gaze. Something cold. Careful, he said softly. She swallowed, then lifted her chin. I meant the tax loopholes. Everyone knows you exploit them. Of course, he said. What else would I mean? He walked into his office and closed the door. Through the glass, he could see her release a breath she'd been holding. She was too smart for her own good. That one. She noticed things. The coded phone calls. The meetings with men who didn't look like businessmen. The way certain people looked at him with fear instead of respect. She was getting close to seeing what he really was. He should fire her. Transfer her. Send her somewhere far away from his world. But he didn't. 3 days later, Ji-hoon called her into his office at 8 a.m. Temalola arrived with her usual tablet, pen, and expression of mild exasperation. This better be important, she said. I was in the middle of fixing whatever disaster accounting created overnight. Sit. She sat, eyeing him warily. He was behind his desk, perfectly composed, but there was something different in his posture. Almost hesitant. No, Ji-hoon Kong didn't do hesitant. We're going to Busan, he said. Temalola waited. When he didn't continue, she prompted. 4. Real estate acquisition. The Houndy project. 3 days next week. You don't need me for real estate meetings. I do if I want them to go smoothly. You have an entire team of acquisition specialists who don't know my schedule, my preferences, or how to keep me from saying something that torpedoes the deal. He leaned back in his chair. You're coming, Mr. Kong. It's not a request. There it was. The voice that closed deals and ended arguments. The voice that made grown men reconsider their entire business strategies. The voice that, in darker contexts, preceded violence. Temalola crossed her arms. I don't have appropriate clothes for Busan. Buy some. I have responsibilities here. Delegate them. I don't like traveling. You'll like unemployment less. She glared at him. He gazed back, impassive. Fine, she said finally. But I'm not sharing a hotel room with you, and I expect hazard pay for whatever chaos you're planning to cause. Noted. He slid a folder across the desk. Flight information. Hotel details. Meeting schedules. We leave Monday morning. She took the folder, flipped it open, and her eyes widened. This hotel costs more per night than I make in a month. It's a 5-star resort. It has a rooftop infinity pool that requires reservations. So make a reservation. Why do I feel like I'm walking into a trap? Ji-hoon's smile was all teeth. Because you're a very intelligent woman, Temalola. She stood, clutching the folder like a shield. One of these days, that intelligence is going to tell me to quit. But not today. Not today, she agreed. As she walked toward the door, he called out, Temalolai? She paused, glancing back. Pack something other than cardigans. It's a beach city. Her jaw dropped in mock offense. These cardigans are professional and comfortable. They're also 3 sizes too big and the color of oatmeal. Oatmeal is a perfectly respectable color. It's the color of giving up. She gasped theatrically. One of these days, Mr. Kong, I'm going to teach you about personal boundaries. One of these days, Miss Davies, he replied smoothly. I'm going to teach you about fashion investment. She left muttering under her breath about insufferable billionaires and their opinions. Ji-hoon watched her go, that almost smile playing at his lips again. He told himself he was bringing her because she was efficient, because she could handle the logistics while he focused on the deal, because having her there would make the entire trip run more smoothly. He told himself it had nothing to do with the way she pushed back at him, the way she wasn't afraid, the way she looked at him like he was just a man, not a monster. He told himself a lot of things. None of them were true. That night, in his penthouse apartment overlooking the Han River, Ji-hoon poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and stood by the windows. His phone buzzed. A message from Tae-min. The accountant won't be a problem anymore. He deleted the message and took a sip of whiskey. This was his world. Blood and business, violence and veneer. He'd inherited it from his father, and his father before him. The Kong family had controlled Seoul's underground for 3 generations. Drugs, weapons, protection. They had fingers in every profitable darkness. And Davies Temalola, with her thick glasses and oversized cardigans and frightening efficiency, had no idea. She couldn't know. If she knew what he really was, she'd run. Or worse, she'd look at him with fear instead of exasperation. And for reasons he refused to examine, that possibility bothered him more than it should. Busan would be simple. 3 days. Business meetings. Professional distance. He'd keep her separate from his world, the way he always did. Nothing would change. The KTX train cut through the Korean countryside at 300 kilometers per hour, the landscape blurring into streaks of green and gray. Temalola sat in the first-class cabin, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard as she finalized the presentation for tomorrow's meeting. Ji-hoon sat across from her, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones. I don't care what he thinks he's owed, Ji-hoon said in Korean, his voice dangerously soft. Tell him payment comes when the shipment arrives intact. Not before. A pause. If he has a problem with that, remind him what happened to the last person who tried to renegotiate our terms. Temalola's fingers hesitated on the keyboard for just a fraction of a second. Then she continued typing, eyes fixed on her screen. Ji-hoon ended the call and slid his phone into his jacket pocket. When he looked up, Temalola was watching him over the rim of her glasses. Difficult supplier? She asked, voice carefully neutral. Something like that. Must be important, threatening people before 10 a.m. His eyes narrowed slightly. I wasn't threatening. I was clarifying expectations. Ah, is that what we're calling it? There was a beat of silence. Then Ji-hoon leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table between them. You have something you want to ask me, Temalola? She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she returned to her laptop. No, Mr. Kong. I'm just your assistant. What you do on phone calls is none of my business. Smart answer. I'm a smart woman. I've noticed. The train jolted suddenly, hitting a rough section of track. Temalola's coffee cup tipped. She reached for it, but Ji-hoon was faster. His hand shot out, steadying the cup before it could spill. Their fingers touched. His were warm, calloused in unexpected places for a businessman. She pulled back quickly. Thank you. You should be more careful. You should use coasters like a civilized person. That almost smile again. Where's the fun in that? She shook her head and returned to work, but she could feel his eyes on her. Not in a creepy way. Ji-hoon was too controlled for that. But there was an intensity to his attention that made her hyper-aware of every movement. The way she tucked hair behind her ear. The way she bit her lip when she concentrated. The way her cardigan had slipped off one shoulder. She tugged it back up. Tell me about the Houndy project, she said, more to fill the silence than anything else. Ji-hoon pulled out his own tablet. Beachfront property. Former hotel, now abandoned. We're buying it, renovating it, and flipping it to a luxury chain. Should triple our investment within 2 years. And the Lee Group is financing? Partially. They want 40% stake in exchange for capital and connections. Temalola frowned, pulling up the financial projections she'd reviewed last week. That's too much. The property value alone justifies 30% maximum, which is why you're coming to the meeting. You'll handle the numbers while I handle the relationship. You mean I'll do the actual work while you smile and look intimidating? Exactly. She snorted. At least you're honest about it. I'm honest about most things. The lie hung between them, obvious to both. Temalola didn't call him on it. Instead, she made notes in the margins of the presentation, adjusting figures and projections. Outside the window, the countryside gave way to coastal views. The ocean stretched toward the horizon, glittering under the late morning sun. Temalola found herself watching it, distracted from her work for the first time in hours. When's the last time you took a vacation? Ji-hoon asked suddenly. She blinked. What? A vacation. Time off. Relaxation. I don't remember. That's concerning, says the man who works 16-hour days. I own the company. You're just staff. The words should have stung, but his tone was oddly gentle, almost teasing. Temalola glanced at him, trying to read his expression. As always, it gave away nothing. Maybe I like working, she said. Maybe you're afraid to stop. That hit closer than she wanted to admit. She closed her laptop with more force than necessary. Are we doing amateur psychology now? Because I have some thoughts about your control issues. I don't have control issues. You color code your ties by day of the week. That's efficiency. You fired an intern for using the wrong font in an email. Comic Sans is an abomination. Despite herself, Temalola laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polite corporate chuckle she usually offered. Ji-hoon's expression shifted, something softening in his features. You should do that more often, he said. What disagree with you? I do it constantly. Laugh. The words settled between them, intimate in a way that made Temalola's pulse kick up. She looked away, focusing on the ocean outside. We should review the Lee Group's background again, she said, changing the subject with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I want to make sure we're not missing any leverage points. Ji-hoon let her redirect. They spent the rest of the train ride discussing business, but something had shifted. The air felt different, charged. Temalola told herself she was imagining it. The Paradise Hotel Busan rose from the beachfront like a glass and steel monument to excess. The lobby was all marble and gold accents, with a ceiling that soared 3 stories high. A massive chandelier hung in the center, crystals catching the afternoon light. Temalola stopped in the entrance, bags in hand, and stared. This isn't a hotel, she said. This is what happens when someone wins the lottery and loses their mind. Ji-hoon walked past her toward the front desk, completely unbothered by the opulence. It's functional. Functional? You could fit my entire apartment in the lobby. Probably twice. She glared at his back. I'm adding insufferable to your performance review. I'm my own boss. I don't have performance reviews. That explains so much. The concierge greeted Ji-hoon by name, which should have surprised Temalola, but didn't. Of course he was a regular here. Probably had been since he was old enough to sign his own checks. Mr. Kong, welcome back. We have your usual suite prepared. And for Miss Davies, the concierge glanced at his computer. The ocean view suite as requested. Separate floors, Ji-hoon said. As specified. Temalola felt an odd flutter in her chest. He'd specifically requested separate floors? That was either very professional or very deliberate. She couldn't decide which. The elevator ride to the 15th floor was silent. Ji-hoon's floor was the 20th, the penthouse level naturally. When the doors opened to Temalola's floor, he stepped out with her. "I can find my own room," she said. "I'm sure you can." But he walked with her anyway, down the plush carpeted hallway to room 1507. She slid the key card, and the door opened to reveal a suite that made her sole apartment look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean. A king-sized bed dominated one side of the room, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There was a sitting area with a velvet couch, a minibar stocked with champagne, and a bathroom visible through an open door that featured a tub the size of a small swimming pool. "This is obscene," Temalola breathed. "This is standard." "For who?" "Royalty." Ji-hoon stepped into the room, moving to the windows. "The meeting is at 7 tonight. Dinner with the Lee Group executives. Formal attire. I brought a blazer and dress pants." He turned, giving her a look that suggested she'd just announced she was wearing a garbage bag. "That's not formal attire. It's what I have." "Then we're going shopping." "Absolutely not." "Temalola." "Mr. Kong, I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly capable of dressing myself for a business dinner." He studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and pocketed it again. "Fine. But if the Lee Group thinks I brought my accountant instead of my assistant, I'm blaming you. I'll accept that risk." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your balcony connects to mine." Temalola blinked. "What?" "The suites on this floor. The balconies connect." He gestured toward the sliding glass door. "There's a shared space between 1507 and the penthouse suite directly above. Old architectural design. Something about encouraging guest interaction. That seems like a privacy nightmare. Just thought you should know." He left before she could ask why he was telling her this. Temalola stood alone in the suite, heart beating slightly too fast. She walked to the balcony doors and slid them open. Warm ocean air rushed in, carrying the scent of salt and something floral from the gardens below. She stepped outside. The balcony was expansive, with lounge chairs and a small table. And yes, to her right, a set of stairs led upward to what must be the penthouse level's balcony. She could see the edge of it, more stairs, more furniture. She quickly retreated inside and closed the door. This was fine. Everything was fine. It was just a work trip. Professional. Structured. The fact that her boss was Ji-hoon Kong, dangerous, controlled, and entirely too observant, changed nothing. She unpacked her blazer and dress pants and hung them carefully. They were perfectly appropriate for a business dinner. Professional. Proper. Boring, whispered a voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like her college roommate. Temalola ignored it. At 6:45 p.m., she stood outside the hotel's restaurant, tugging at her blazer and wishing she'd worn different shoes. The restaurant was called Azure, and it looked like it required a 3-month waiting list and a blood sacrifice just to get a table. Ji-hoon appeared at 6:50, and Temalola forgot how to breathe. He'd changed into a black suit that was somehow even more expensive looking than his usual attire. His tie was deep navy, his shirt crisp white, but it was the way he moved that caught her attention. That predatory grace that suggested violence underneath civilization. His eyes swept over her blazer and pants, and his expression didn't change. But she saw the tiny tightening around his mouth. "You look professional," he said. That was the goal. Very sensible. "Are you about to insult my outfit?" "I wouldn't dream of it." But his tone said otherwise. The Lee Group executives were already seated. 3 men in their 50s and 1 woman in her 40s, all dressed in designer labels and expensive jewelry. They greeted Ji-hoon with warm handshakes and assessing eyes. When they looked at Temalola, she saw the dismissal immediately. Assistant. Staff. Furniture. Good. That's what she wanted. Dinner started with small talk and expensive wine. Temalola took notes on her tablet, tracking the conversation's flow. The Lee Group talked about their portfolio, their expansion plans, their vision for luxury development. Then Director Lee mentioned the financing terms. 40% stake, he said, swirling his wine. For complete capital coverage and our brand partnership. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. That's generous. We think it's fair market value. Fair market value, Temalola said suddenly, would be 32% based on the property assessment and projected renovation costs. Every head turned toward her. She kept her voice level, professional. The Houndy property is valued at 45 billion won currently. With renovations estimated at 30 billion, total investment is 75 billion. Your capital coverage is 30 billion, 40% of investment, but only 32% of final property value once appreciations are factored in. Requesting 40% stake represents an 8% overvaluation. Silence. Director Lee stared at her. Then he laughed. Your assistant does her homework, Mr. Kong. She does everything thoroughly, Ji-hoon said, and there was something in his voice. Pride? Appreciation? That made Temalola's cheeks warm. The negotiation shifted. Numbers flew back and forth. Temalola provided data, corrected miscalculations, and quietly demolished every weak point in the Lee Group's position. By the time dessert arrived, they'd agreed on 34%. Director Lee raised his glass. To partnership, and to hiring better assistants. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Ji-hoon, who was watching Temalola with an expression she couldn't quite read. After dinner, they walked back through the hotel lobby. Temalola felt the adrenaline draining, leaving her exhausted. You did well tonight, Ji-hoon said. I did my job. You did more than that. She glanced at him, surprised. Compliments from Ji-hoon Kong were rarer than blue moons. Thank you, she said quietly. They reached the elevators. Stood waiting in comfortable silence. Temalola, he said as the doors opened. Tomorrow we have the afternoon free. The final signing isn't until evening. Okay. Would you want to? He stopped. Reconsidered. Never mind. The elevator arrived at her floor. She stepped out, then turned back. Would I want to what? But the doors were already closing, and Ji-hoon's expression was carefully neutral again. In her suite, Temalola changed into pajamas and stood on the balcony, looking at the ocean. The moon painted a silver path across the water. Somewhere above her, she heard footsteps on the penthouse balcony. She should go inside. Instead, she stayed, listening to the waves and wondering what Ji-hoon Kong had been about to ask her. Temalola woke at 5:47 a.m. to golden light spilling across her hotel room. She hadn't slept well. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, and her mind wouldn't stop replaying the dinner. Specifically the way Ji-hoon had looked at her when she dismantled the Lee Group's numbers. Like he was seeing her for the first time, which was ridiculous. He'd seen her every day for 3 years. She gave up on sleep and padded to the balcony in her pajamas. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. Sunrise over Houndy Beach. It was objectively beautiful. Her gaze drifted upward to the penthouse balcony. Empty. Of course it was empty. Ji-hoon was probably awake, working, doing whatever terrifyingly efficient things he did at dawn. Then she noticed the pool. The hotel's rooftop infinity pool, visible from her balcony, caught the sunrise like liquid fire. It was completely empty. No guests. No staff. Just still, perfect water reflecting the sky. Before she could talk herself out of it, Temalola was digging through her suitcase for the swimsuit she'd packed on a whim. A simple black one-piece, conservative and practical. She'd bought it 2 years ago for a beach trip that never happened, and it had been sitting in her drawer ever since. She pulled it on, hesitated at her reflection. Without her glasses, the mirror was slightly blurry, but she could see enough. The suit fit well, maybe too well. It showed the curves she usually hid under oversized cardigans and structured blazers. For a moment, she considered changing back into her pajamas. Then she grabbed a towel and her room key and left before common sense could stop her. The rooftop was accessed through a private elevator that required a key card. Temalola's worked. Apparently all suites had pool access. The doors opened to reveal paradise. The infinity pool stretched along the entire rooftop edge. Glass barriers providing unobstructed ocean views. Loungers were arranged in perfect symmetry. Tropical plants created small pockets of privacy. And the water, God, the water looked perfect. Temalola set her glasses and towel on a chair and approached the edge. The water was cool silk against her skin as she slid in. She sighed, letting her shoulders sink beneath the surface. When was the last time she'd done something just for herself? Just because it felt good? She couldn't remember. She swam lazy laps, letting her hair escape its bun until it floated around her shoulders. The sunrise painted everything gold and pink. The city was waking up below, but up here she was alone. Free. Just Temalola. Not Mr. Kang's assistant. Not the efficient problem solver. Not the woman who hid behind glasses and cardigans. Just herself. She floated on her back, eyes closed, feeling the sun warm her face. She didn't hear the elevator. Didn't hear the footsteps. Didn't know she wasn't alone until a voice, rough and low, said, "I didn't know you swam." Temalola's eyes snapped open. Jihoon stood at the pool's edge, 15 feet away. He wore running clothes, black athletic shorts, a fitted tank top that showed the dragon tattoo coiling up his left arm in full glory, and a towel around his neck. His hair was damp with sweat. He must have been running on the beach, and he was staring at her. Not the polite, professional look she was used to. This was different. Intense. Hungry. Like he'd just discovered something he didn't know existed, and was trying to figure out if it was real. Temalola's heart slammed against her ribs. She stood in the water, suddenly hyper-aware that she wasn't wearing her glasses, that her hair was down, that the swimsuit clung to every curve she usually kept hidden. Her voice came out wrong. She cleared her throat. I couldn't sleep. Jihoon didn't move, just kept staring. His jaw was tight, his hands curled into fists at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from something. "Mr. Kong," she said, quieter now. That snapped him out of it. He blinked, and some of the intensity faded. But not all of it. Not nearly all of it. "I should go," he said, voice rougher than usual. "You don't have to." "I should go," he repeated, but his feet didn't move. Temalola didn't know what to do. She was trapped in the water, unable to exit without walking right past him. And something in his expression, something raw and barely controlled, made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. This was Jihoon Kong without his armor, without his perfectly pressed suits and cold businessman facade. This was the man underneath, and he was looking at her like she'd just shattered every carefully constructed wall he'd built. "Your tattoo," she said, because she needed to say something. "I've never seen all of it before." His eyes flicked to his arm, where the dragon's head snarled across his shoulder and its body coiled down to his wrist. "Most people don't. It's beautiful. It's a reminder." "Of what?" His eyes met hers. "That I'm not a good man, Temalola." The use of her name, her actual name, without the formal suffix, sent electricity down her spine. "I never thought you were," she said honestly. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise? Relief? "No, you're too controlled. Too careful. Good men don't need that much discipline." She moved slowly through the water toward the steps. Good men don't make phone calls about shipments and payment terms and what happened to the last person who crossed them. Jihoon's entire body went rigid. "You heard that. I hear a lot of things. And you're not afraid." She should be. She knew that. Whatever Jihoon Kong was involved in, it wasn't legal. Wasn't safe. Wasn't the kind of thing a smart woman ignored. But when she looked at him, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man who color-coded his ties and remembered how she took her coffee and had specifically requested separate floors in the hotel. She saw control that was slipping. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. "You should be." She climbed the first step, water streaming down her body. Jihoon's eyes tracked every drop. His breathing had changed slower, more deliberate, like he was fighting for composure. "Why?" she asked. "Are you going to hurt me?" "No." The word was immediate, fierce. "Never." "Then why should I be afraid?" "Because..." He stopped himself, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "Because I'm losing control, and when I lose control, people get hurt." Another step. She was almost out of the pool now, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough to smell his scent, sweat and something else, something expensive and masculine. "You haven't lost control," she said quietly. "You're just realizing it was never as solid as you thought." His hand shot out, wrapped around her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. The world narrowed to that point of contact. His fingers were warm, slightly calloused. His grip was steady despite the tension radiating through his body. "Temalola," he said, and hearing her name in that rough, desperate voice made something inside her chest crack open. "I'm trying to be professional. I know. I'm trying to keep you separate from my world. I know that too. I'm trying not to." He stopped, swallowed hard. His eyes dropped to her mouth, then dragged back up with visible effort. "You should put your glasses on." "Why?" "Because without them, I can see your eyes clearly. And when I can see your eyes—" He trailed off, but his grip on her wrist tightened fractionally. "You should put your glasses on and go back to your room." "What if I don't want to?" The question hung between them like a lit match over gasoline. Ji-hoon's control finally cracked. He pulled her closer, not rough but inexorable. She stumbled the last step out of the pool, and suddenly she was pressed against his chest, water soaking into his tank top, her wet body against his warm one. "Then we're both making a mistake," he said against her ear. His other hand came up to her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. The gentleness of the gesture contrasted sharply with the tension in his body. He was holding himself back, she realized, using every ounce of that famous control to keep from crossing a line they both knew existed. "Mr. Kong." "Ji-hoon," he said roughly. "If we're doing this, if we're destroying every professional boundary I've tried to maintain, you should at least use my name." "Ji-hoon," she whispered, testing it. His eyes closed like he was in pain. "You're going to ruin me. I'm just your assistant." "You're not. You've never been just anything." His thumb traced her jaw. "I noticed that the first day you walked into my office. The way you organized chaos. The way you looked at me without fear. The way you pushed back when everyone else just agreed. You hired me because I was efficient. I hired you because you were brilliant. I kept you because—" He opened his eyes, and the raw need in them stole her breath. "I kept you because letting you go would have been the smartest thing I've ever done, and I couldn't do it." Temalola's hands had somehow found his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, racing just as fast as hers. "This is a bad idea. Terrible idea. We work together. I'm aware. You're involved in things I don't understand. Dangerous things. Yes. And you're still not letting me go." His hand slid into her wet hair, cradling the back of her head. No, they were breath apart now. The sunrise painted them in gold. The city stretched below, waking up to a normal day while up here, everything was changing. Ji-hoon's phone buzzed in his pocket. They both froze. It buzzed again. Insistent. Urgent. Reality crashed back in. Ji-hoon's expression shuddered, control slamming back into place so fast Temalola almost got whiplash. He stepped back, releasing her, and pulled out his phone. "Kong," he answered, voice cold and professional. Temalola couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Ji-hoon's face harden. "When?" Pause. "How many?" Another pause. "I'll handle it. Don't move until I give the order." He hung up and stood there for a moment, back to her, shoulders rigid. "You need to go back to your room," he said finally. "Ji-hoon." Now Temalola. He turned, and his eyes were the CEO eyes again. Cold. Distant. That wasn't a request. She should argue. Should demand answers. Should do something other than grab her towel and glasses and walk away. But the look on his face stopped her. That was the look of a man who'd just been reminded of exactly what he was. And exactly why he kept people at a distance. Temalola fled to the elevator, her heart pounding, her body still buzzing from his touch. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen Ji-hoon standing at the pool's edge, hands braced on the glass barrier, looking like a man who'd just lost something he'd never actually had. In her suite, Temalola stood under a cold shower until she stopped shaking. Then she put on her glasses, pulled her hair back into its usual bun, and buttoned her cardigan all the way up, armor back in place. But when she caught her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were too bright. Her lips were slightly parted. She looked like someone who'd just discovered something dangerous and couldn't decide if she wanted to run toward it or away from it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ji-hoon. "Meeting moved to 2 p.m. Take the morning. I have business to handle." No mention of the pool. No acknowledgement of what had almost happened. Just business. Temalola threw her phone on the bed and screamed into a pillow. When she emerged, she felt slightly better and significantly more confused. What the hell had just happened? And more importantly, what was going to happen next? Temalola didn't see Ji-hoon for the rest of the morning. She tried to work, pulled up spreadsheets, reviewed contracts, answered emails, but her mind kept drifting back to the pool, to his hands in her hair, to the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once, to the phone call that had shattered everything. At 1:30 p.m., she dressed for the meeting in her blazer and dress pants, armor firmly back in place. When she arrived at the hotel's conference room, Ji-hoon was already there, looking every inch the controlled businessman. Perfect suit, perfect tie, perfect mask. But his eyes lingered on her a fraction too long when she entered. The final contract signing with the Lee Group was mechanical. Papers were shuffled, terms confirmed, signatures applied. Director Lee shook Ji-hoon's hand and praised Temalola's financial acumen. She smiled politely and said nothing. The entire time, she felt Ji-hoon's attention on her like a physical weight. When it was over, when the Lee Group executives had left with promises of future partnerships, Temalola began packing her tablet. Ji-hoon stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the ocean. "That call this morning," he said quietly. "It was about a shipment that went missing. 30 million won worth of product." Temalola's hands stilled. He was telling her. Actually telling her. "Did you find it?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. "Yes. Someone in my organization thought they could skim off the top without me noticing." He turned to face her. "They were wrong. What happened to them? What always happens to people who steal from me?" The words hung in the air. Temalola should be horrified. Should be running. Should be doing anything except standing here, calmly discussing theft and consequences with a man who was clearly involved in organized crime. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked instead. Ji-hoon moved closer, stopping just outside her personal space. "Because this morning at the pool I almost kissed you. And if I had, you would have deserved to know exactly what kind of man you were kissing. I already know what kind of man you are. Do you?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "Do you know that my family has controlled souls underground for 3 generations? That the Kong name is synonymous with violence and power? That I've personally—" He stopped himself. "You don't know, Temalola. You can't know. Then tell me." "No." "Why not?" "Because once you know everything, you'll look at me differently. And I'm selfish enough to want a few more days of you looking at me like I'm just a man." Temalola set down her tablet and removed her glasses, cleaning them unnecessarily. "You think I don't know? Ji-hoon, I've worked for you for 3 years. I've heard the phone calls. Seen the men in expensive suits who look at you like you're a king. Noticed the way certain people disappear after making you angry." His jaw clenched. "And you stayed. And I stayed." She put her glasses back on, meeting his eyes. "I'm not naive. I'm not blind. I chose to stay because—" She hesitated. "Because the man who color codes his ties and remembers my coffee order and requested separate hotel floors is the same man who makes those phone calls. You're both. And I'm not afraid of either version. You should be afraid of the second one. Probably." She picked up her tablet. "But I'm not." Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "I don't know what to do with you. You don't have to do anything. We can go back to Seoul, pretend this morning never happened, and maintain professional boundaries like sensible people. Is that what you want?" "No." The word escaped before she could stop it. "But it's probably what we should do." "Since when do you care about should?" "Since my boss almost kissed me at sunrise and then spent the rest of the day avoiding me." "I wasn't avoiding you. I was handling a crisis, which you then told me about, breaking your own rules about keeping me separate from your world." She moved closer, emboldened by her own confusion and frustration. "So which is it, Ji-hoon? Am I your assistant who needs protecting from the darkness? Or am I someone you trust with the truth?" He reached out, caught her wrist like he had at the pool. But this time his touch was gentle, almost reverent. "You're the only person in my life who sees both sides and doesn't run. The only one who pushes back. The only one who makes me feel like—" He trailed off. "Like what?" "Like I'm more than what my father made me." The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Temalola's chest. She'd never heard him sound like that. Never seen him look so uncertain. "You are more," she said softly. You're brutal and controlled and dangerous. But you're also the man who makes sure I eat lunch when I'm working through breaks, who gives me Christmas bonuses that are twice what other assistants get, who requested separate floors because you were trying to be professional even though you wanted. You, he finished. I wanted you. From the moment you walked into my office 3 years ago and told me my filing system was an organizational nightmare. Despite everything, Temalola laughed. Your filing system was an organizational nightmare. It still is. I keep it that way so you'll have to fix it. That's the worst seduction strategy I've ever heard. And yet here we are. He pulled her closer. And this time she went willingly. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone like he had at the pool. Tell me to stop, he said. Tell me to maintain boundaries and be professional and forget this morning happened. And if I don't, then I'm going to kiss you. And once I start, I don't know if I can stop. And everything changes. Temalola's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. The choice. Safety or risk. Professional distance or dangerous intimacy. She reached up and deliberately removed her glasses, setting them on the conference table. I'm tired of armor, she said. Ji-hoon's control finally completely shattered. He kissed her like a man who'd been holding back for 3 years and had finally run out of restraint. His mouth was hot and demanding against hers, his hands tangling in her hair and pulling it free from its bun. She gasped against him, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot her own name. This wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. This was raw need and suppressed desire finally unleashed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hoon pressed his forehead to hers. This is a mistake, he said. You said that already. I mean it this time. No, you don't. He laughed, the sound rough and genuine. No, I don't. They kissed again, slower this time but no less intense. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing every curve he'd glimpsed at the pool. She grabbed his tie and pulled him closer, done with distance and propriety and all the rules they'd maintained for 3 years. My sweet, he said against her mouth. Or yours. Yours. It's bigger. Practical even now. Someone has to be. They made it to the penthouse suite in record time, kissing in the elevator, stumbling through the door, leaving a trail of professional armor. His jacket, her blazer, his tie, across the marble floor. And when they finally fell into his bed, the sunset painting the room in gold through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Temalola thought distantly that this was definitely a terrible idea. But terrible ideas had never felt so much like coming home. Act V. New equilibrium. They returned to Seoul on a Thursday. The office noticed immediately. It wasn't that Ji-hoon and Temalola were openly affectionate. They weren't. But there was something different in the way they moved around each other. The way his hand lingered on her desk when he dropped off files. The way she walked into his office without knocking and closed the door behind her. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. Marcy from HR cornered Temalola in the break room on Friday morning. You're glowing, Marcy said, eyes narrowed suspiciously. And you're wearing different glasses. And is that a new cardigan? It actually fits you properly. Temalola poured her coffee with studied casualness. I don't know what you're talking about. You and Mr. Kong. Something happened in Busan. We closed a deal. That's what happened. That's not the only thing that closed. Marcy leaned in conspiratorially. Everyone's talking. The way he looks at you now. That's not professional. Marcy, I'm not judging. God knows that man needed someone to crack that Ice King exterior. I'm just saying, be careful. Office romances are complicated. Office romances with the CEO who's rumored to have very interesting business connections are. Marcy. Temalola's voice was firm. I appreciate the concern, but I know what I'm doing. Do you? Honestly? Temalola wasn't sure, but she was choosing it anyway. That evening, after the office had emptied, she found Ji-hoon in his suite. Not his office, but the private apartment attached to the executive floor that she'd never been invited to before. He was on the phone when she entered, speaking rapid Korean in the tone that meant business of the illegal kind. She waited, studying the space. It was masculine and minimalist, all clean lines and dark colors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Han River. A bar cart in the corner held expensive whiskey. Ji-hoon ended the call and turned to find her standing in his living room. You shouldn't be here, he said, but he was already moving toward her. Your door was unlocked. For you. Not for anyone else. He kissed her and she melted into it, still not entirely used to this. Being allowed to touch him, to taste him, to have him. I have a problem, he said against her mouth. Just one. Everyone at the office knows. Let them know. He pulled back slightly. You're not concerned about your reputation? My reputation is that I'm efficient and organized. That doesn't change because I'm sleeping with my boss. Is that all this is? Sleeping together. The question caught her off guard. She studied his face, trying to read the emotion there. Is that what you want it to be? No. His hands tightened on her waist. I want you in my bed. In my life. In every part of my world that I can safely bring you into. And the parts that aren't safe? His expression darkened. Those you'll never see. I'll make sure of it. Temalola reached up, tracing the dragon tattoo visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. What if I don't want protection? What if I want partnership? Partnership in what? My legitimate business holdings, yes. But the other? I'm not asking to attend your criminal board meetings, Ji-hoon. I'm asking you to stop treating me like fragile glass that'll shatter if you're honest with me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, 3 days ago, I had someone's fingers broken for stealing from me. Temalola didn't flinch. Did they deserve it? By my world standards? Yes. Then why are you telling me? Because I need you to understand what I am. What being with me means. She moved closer, pressing against him. I understand that you run an empire built on fear and violence. I understand that people are terrified of you. I understand that you've done things I'll never know about and probably shouldn't. She looked up at him. I also understand that you're trying to scare me away because you think it's the right thing to do. But it won't work. Why not? Because I already decided. In Busan, at that pool, when you touched me like I was precious and dangerous all at once, I decided. You don't get to unmake that choice for me. Ji-hoon stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he kissed her again, and this time it was different. Softer. Almost tender. You're going to ruin me, he murmured. Good. You were too controlled anyway. He laughed, and the sound was genuine and warm, and everything the rest of the world never got to hear. 2 weeks later, someone tried to use Temalola to get to Ji-hoon. She was leaving the office late when a black car pulled up. 2 men got out, and she knew immediately they weren't there for friendly conversation. Miss Davies, one of them said, our employer would like to speak with you about Mr. Kang's business arrangements. Temalola's heart kicked into overdrive, but she kept her voice steady. I'm just an assistant. I don't know anything about business arrangements. We think you know more than you're saying. The second man moved closer, and Temalola calculated her options. Run. Scream. Comply? I wouldn't, said a cold voice from behind them. Ji-hoon materialized from the parking garage, flanked by 2 of his own men. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Gentlemen, Ji-hoon said, voice like silk over steel. You're on my property. Threatening my people. We were just talking. You were threatening my assistant. There's a difference. He moved to stand between them and Temalola, his body language screaming danger. Tell your employer that if he wants to discuss business, he can call my office like a civilized person. If he sends anyone near her again, I'll take it as a declaration of war. The men hesitated, then retreated to their car. They drove away quickly. Ji-hoon turned to Temalola, his controlled mask cracking to reveal raw fear underneath. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Did they touch you? No. He pulled her against him, and she felt him shaking. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You being targeted because of me. I'm okay. This time. What about next time? Temalola grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Then we'll deal with next time. Together. That's what partnership means, Ji-hoon. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. No, she agreed. But I know that pushing me away won't keep me safe. It'll just make us both miserable. He kissed her there in the parking garage, hard and desperate and claiming. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. You're staying at my place tonight. And tomorrow we're discussing security protocols. Are you giving me orders? Yes. Good. She took his hand. I was hoping you would. Temalola walked into Ji-hoon's office on a Tuesday morning without knocking. She never knocked anymore. He was on the phone, but he smiled when he saw her. A real smile, the kind no one else in the building ever got to see. She set his coffee on the desk, double shot, no sugar, exactly how he liked it, and dropped a file folder next to it. Lee Group wants to discuss the Gangnam property, she said. I told them Thursday at 2. Ji-hoon ended his call. Efficient as always. Someone has to be. She started to leave, then paused. Also, your mother called. She wants us both at dinner on Sunday. Us. Apparently, I'm not your assistant anymore. I'm your girlfriend who needs to learn the family kimchi recipe. Are you complaining? I'm just saying, your mother is terrifying in ways you'll never be. He laughed and pulled her into his lap. She went willingly, adjusting her glasses, new frames she'd finally let him buy her, as he kissed her neck. We're at work, she protested half-heartedly. I'm the CEO. I'll take a meeting however I want. This is not a meeting. It's a very important discussion about our weekend plans, which apparently include learning kimchi recipes. Among other things. His hands slid under her blazer, and she felt the familiar heat building. Ji-hoon. Yes, Temalola? Lock the door. He did. Outside the glass walls of his office, the company continued its efficient operations. Deals were made. Money changed hands. The Kong Empire, both legitimate and otherwise, continued its expansion. But inside, for just a few stolen minutes, there was only Ji-hoon and Temalola. The dangerous man and the brilliant woman who'd seen his darkness and chosen him anyway. She'd stopped wearing oversized cardigans. He'd stopped pretending he didn't care. And when they finally emerged from his office an hour later, slightly disheveled but professionally composed, the entire floor pretended not to notice. Except Marcy from HR, who caught Temalola's eye and mouthed, I knew it. Temalola just smiled. That evening, in Ji-hoon's penthouse apartment, she stood on the balcony watching the city lights. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. Any regrets? He asked. About choosing this. Me. This life. Temalola turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. Not a single one. Even knowing what I am. Especially knowing what you are. She traced the dragon tattoo on his arm. You're brutal and dangerous and morally complicated. You're also mine. And I'm keeping you. Ji-hoon's smile was slow and devastating. I'm not sure who captured whom. Does it matter? No, he agreed, kissing her again. It doesn't. In the distance, the Han River reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds. Seoul continued its eternal rhythm. Millions of people living their lives, making their choices, finding their paths. And on a balcony high above it all, a mafia boss and his nerdy assistant who wasn't really nerdy anymore, or maybe had never been, held each other as the night settled in. Rules had been broken. Boundaries had been crossed. Professional distance had become intimate proximity. And neither of them would have changed a single thing.